Now, I know what you guys are thinking at the beginning of this video. Goon's actually recording in the middle of the day? I know, and I don't really know what to tell you. But what I can tell you is that you can save 15% or more on your car insurance by switching to Geico. They're not sponsoring this video, I just wanted to feel special. So I debated about making this video for quite a while now, and that's not only because I was a fan of this particular individual's music, but because at the time that this was presented to me, there just simply wasn't enough information that I felt was available to compel me to actually create a video around this topic. Thankfully, though, enough time has passed, and one of the alleged victims has actually named this individual as what she recognizes him as, which is her abuser. In this video, we're going to be discussing Brian Hugh Warner, otherwise professionally known as Marilyn Manson, and the allegations that have come out against him, not just by Rachel Evan Wood, but numerous other women in the industries of music, movies, photography, and much more. So let's get started in the typical way that I do things, and I just want to give you full warning, go ahead and strap in. It's going to be a long one. Brian Hugh Warner was born on January 5th, 1989 in Canton, Ohio. Let's just go ahead and pause for a minute and say that this dude does not represent all of us Capricorns, so for all you stargazers out there, please don't be so hasty to judge us. We're pretty chill. He was the only son of Barbara Warner Wire and Hugh Angus Warner, and this is already off to a great start because it sounds like Manson grew up taunting animals on a farm. Brian's parents were somewhat religious, to say the very least, and in his youth he would attend his mother's Episcopal church despite the fact that his father was a Roman Catholic. Brian would attend the Heritage Christian School from grades 1 through 10, and it's a bit noteworthy to mention the fact that at this school, these children were taught what types of music they were supposed to listen to and what type of music they were not supposed to listen to. In a naturally rebellious fashion, Brian fell in love with the music that he was not supposed to listen to. Eventually, Brian would transfer to Glen Oak High School and graduated in 1987. After graduation, Brian would relocate to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where he would attend college in 1990. Warner was working toward a degree in journalism, which is a huge irony alert, and was gaining experience in the field writing articles for the music magazine 25th Parallel. Before becoming a musician himself, Warner would also interview musicians that later became comparative to his own work in the industry. To me, one of the most noteworthy interviews and comparisons would be to that of Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails fame. In 1989, Warner formed Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids with guitarist Scott Patesky. The name would later become shortened to Marilyn Manson. From here on out, I'm going to address him as Manson since this is his most recognized name. During this time, Manson would meet stage names Twiggy Ramirez and Madonna Wayne Gacy, in which Manson would participate in two side project bands as a drummer and a bassist. In 1993, Manson would gain the attention of Trent Reznor, who recorded and produced Manson's debut album, Portrait of an American Family, on his Nothing Records label. Manson's band would soar to popularity during the Downward Spiral tour featuring Nine Inch Nails, which also coincided with the release of their Smells Like Children album. Manson would also go on to appear in TV and film in 1997, debuting in David Lynch's Lost Highway, as well as making cameos in popular shows such as Californication, Eastbound and Down, and Sons of Anarchy. So it's safe to assume that Manson has had his fair share of popularity and success. 3 of the Manson albums were awarded 2 Platinum Awards, and 3 others went gold with 7 releases in the top 10 with 2 #1 albums. That's not necessarily to say that these things would make Manson a good person. Far from it. Manson has faced and shared a number of controversies. What? You thought I was going to continue to praise him? You know why you're here. And there isn't a whole lot of good news to share. Let's start off with some simple lawsuits. In 1996, former bassist Gidget Gein sought a settlement with Manson where he would be paid $17,500 US and 20% of any royalties paid for any recordings for songs that he had participated in writing, and any shares of royalties that were earned while he was an existing member of the band, as well as the rights to market himself as a former member of Marilyn Manson. Just want to go ahead and let you know that this didn't really pan out. Former guitarist Daisy Berkowitz filed a $15 million lawsuit in Florida against Manson, the band, and the attorney, claiming to be owed thousands of dollars in royalties, publishing rights, and performance fees. In 1998, the band had accumulated $25,000 in backstage and hotel room damages. The editor of Spin magazine would file a $24 million lawsuit against Manson and his bodyguards, which would later be dropped after Manson filed a countersuit against the editor for $40 million for libel, slander, slander, and defamation of character. Manson would later apologize for the damages and offered to pay financial restitution. In the year 2000, Manson would face not one but 2 lawsuits from 2 separate security guards, one of which filed charges for sexual misconduct against himself in Oakland County. This was originally filed as assault and battery and criminal misconduct, but was later reduced by a judge to misdemeanor disorderly conduct. 2 years later, Manson would see a lawsuit in which a mother accused Manson of providing her adult daughter with and making her drive under the influence. It was reported that Jennifer Syme had attended a party at Manson's house and was later given a ride home. In the report, Manson stated that Syme was delivered home by a designated driver, at which point Syme would later get into her own vehicle and was killed in a car accident after crashing into 3 parked cars. Manson claimed that there were no drugs or alcohol present at this party. Adding to the long and varied list of Manson's controversies, in 1999 his band was blamed for the Columbine incident. For the purpose of saving time, I'm not going to be getting into the details of Columbine, but that story is old enough that I'm sure most, if not all people watching this video are aware of what occurred that day in 1999 in Colorado. Originally, it was reported that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were fans of Manson's music. The media weaved a tale of Harris and Klebold being a part of a gothic cult and members of the Trenchcoat Mafia. Statements were made that the young men were on the scene of the incident wearing Marilyn Manson t-shirts and were avid fans of the band. This would later be proven to be false, but that would not stop the media from running stories such as Killer Worship Rock Freak Manson and Devil Worship Maniac told kids to kill. Politicians would lobby to have Manson's live performances banned, citing extreme claims that their shows contained animal sacrifice, bestiality, and more. Due to pressure, backlash, and blame for a heinous crime that had nothing to do with the band or their music, the last 5 shows of their tour during that year would be canceled out of respect for the victims and their families. Despite this, Manson would remain diligent that music, movies, books, and video games were not to blame, further stating that the media has unfairly scapegoated the music industry and so-called goth kids and has speculated, with no basis in truth, that artists like myself are in some way to blame. This tragedy was the product of ignorance, hatred, and an access to guns. I hope the media's irresponsible finger-pointing does not create more discrimination against kids who look different. Let me just tell you from personal experience, as a youth who looked different and fell pretty closely in line with this particular subculture, it most assuredly still did create an atmosphere of, I guess you could say, discrimination. I can easily admit that most of that discrimination came directly from people that I had known for a very, very long time, and this was very short-lived. Initially, Manson had declined to appear on the news or talk shows, but in 2001 he made an appearance on The O'Reilly Factor. O'Reilly challenged Manson with bringing up controversial behaviors, such as the particular impact his music could have on unsupervised or disturbed youth and how they could misinterpret Manson's message of his music. Manson would go on to say,
"Well, I think that's a very valid point. And I think that that's a reflection of not necessarily this program, but of television in general. If you die and enough people are watching, then you become a martyr, you become a hero, you become well known. So when you have things like Columbine and you have these kids that are angry and they have something to say and no one's listening, the media sends a message that if you do something loud enough and it gets our attention, then you will be famous for it. Those kids ended up on the cover of Time magazine. The media gave them exactly what they wanted, and that's why I never did any interviews when that happened, when I was getting blamed for it, because I felt that I would be contributing to what I found to be reprehensible."
Manson would go on to state that his music did not promote ideas of self-harm, but did encourage getting through and over those types of thoughts and feelings. He would also mention that he does not promote nor condone violence, hate, self-harm, or anything else that he stood to be accused of. It would seem that this would be a great place to call another irony alert, because this is not where the controversy stops with Brian Warner. Not even by a long shot. If you've been paying attention lately, you'd know that he is once again in the media. And although it's not for charges of royalties unpaid or a school and firearm related crime, the allegations and statements are just as horrible and damning as they could ever be. I suggest getting a refill on that drink you've got sitting next to you. Let's take another look at the people that he has impacted both in romantic and non-romantic relationships. Starting from February of 1999 to January of 2001, Manson was engaged to Rose McGowan. This would end due to lifestyle differences. Not long after their parting, Dita Von Teese, a burlesque dancer, model, and costume designer, would come together to form a relationship with Manson. In March of 2004, Manson would propose and they would be married privately. On December 26th of 2006, Von Teese would file for divorce for irreconcilable differences. Dita Von Teese would go on to say that she did not agree with Manson's heavy drinking, partying, or his relationship with another girl. Shortly after the divorce was made final in 2007, Manson's relationship with Rachel Evan Wood would be made public. Just 5 years after this, Manson would go on to state that he was newly single after rumors had started to spin that Manson was dating Lindsay Usick, a photographer that had been credited as the source for Manson's Born Villain album. In 2020, Manson would reveal to Nicolas Cage that he had been privately married during the ongoing pandemic, to which the bride would later be revealed to be Lindsay Usick. This was confirmed with her name change on social media to Lindsay Elizabeth Warner. Now, on the surface, it would seem like for the most part, things don't necessarily come off too irregular here. Sure, it certainly speaks a little loud to say that in most of his relationship, he has always opted to be married, and while divorce due to one or both parties having a difference in lifestyle and behaviors is pretty normal, there is more here than meets the eye. Let's go back to Rachel Evan Wood, as she will still serve as the core person to get the ball rolling here. Wood and Manson went public with their romance in 2007. At the time, Wood was 19 and Manson was 36. Hot off the heels of his divorce with Von Teese, Wood would mention facing scrutiny and harsh criticisms from the public due to his recent divorce. This, of course, was something that was new to Rachel, as she was not used to the public bombarding her with negative feedback and comments. In 2010, Manson would propose to Rachel, but this would be cut short less than 1 year later. 6 years after the relationship had ended, Rachel Evan Wood revealed that she had been sexually assaulted twice, but did not reveal the name or names of her abusers. The Me Too movement started to gain traction. Wood remained vigilant that she would keep the name to herself. In her own words, Wood would state, "People are wondering why more women don't come forward sooner, and why, in a lot of cases, one woman will come out or multiple women will come out and then the floodgates will open. They do not feel safe enough to do so, period. And I'm guilty of this as well because I have not named my abusers. To start that process is an emotionally draining, financially draining, really everything draining thing to do and to go through, and I want to do it when I am ready." In 2019, Rachel would be in headlines again when she detailed her experience with a past abusive relationship, stating the following: "I was emaciated, severely depressed, and could barely stand. 2 years into my abusive relationship, I resorted to self-harm. When my abuser would threaten or attack me, I cut my wrist as a way to disarm him. It only made the abuse stop temporarily. At that point, I was desperate to stop the relentless abuse, and I was too terrified to leave." In February of 2019, Rachel Evan Wood would accuse Manson of grooming and abuse during their relationship. Following her claims, additional women have come forward with their own statements. Once again, a statement from Rachel reads as follows: "The name of my abuser is Brian Warner, also known to the world as Marilyn Manson. He started grooming me when I was a teenager and horrifically abused me for years. I was brainwashed and manipulated into submission. I am here to expose this dangerous man and call out the many industries that have enabled him before he ruins any more lives. I stand with the many victims who will no longer be silent." Let's outline a few other things that happened between 2007 and 2021. In a Spin magazine interview, Manson mentioned that at one point when they had broke up, he had called Wood 158 times and had fantasies of smashing her skull with a sledgehammer. This, of course, would be defended by Manson's team of representatives as a theatrical rock star interview to promote his new album and not a factual occurrence. In 2018, Wood outlined her abuse for the House Judiciary Committee in an effort to secure a Bill of Rights for sexual assault survivors in the United States. The statement reads as follows: "My experience with domestic violence was this: the toxic, mental, physical, and sexual abuse which started slow but escalated over time, including threats to my life, severe gaslighting, and brainwashing, waking up to the man that claimed to love me what he believed to be my unconscious body." Rachel would go on to describe sick rituals of binding me up by my hands and feet to be mentally and physically tortured until my abuser felt that I had proven my love for them. In this moment, while I was tied up and being beaten and being told unspeakable things, I truly felt like I could die. Not just because my abuser said to me, "I could kill you right now," but because in that moment, I felt like I left my body and I was afraid to run. Rachel would continue, Not a day goes by when I don't hear the words this man whispered into my ear over and over. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. And then my small voice saying back, no, 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 until it faded into nothing. Even though these experiences happened a decade ago, I still struggle with the aftermath. My relationship suffers, my partner suffer, my mental and physical health suffers. 7 years after my plural, I was diagnosed with long-term PTSD, which I had been living with all that time without knowledge about my condition. I simply thought I was going crazy. Now, I want to make a note here for those who may see this as BDSM. What was mentioned above does not sound safe, sane, or consensual. Although I'm not an active member of this particular community, I'm still aware that what is mentioned above does not line up with similar activities or enacted behaviors by adults who practice. Please do some research before passing judgment. Looking further into her statements, Rachel would say, he gifted me a cell phone which I found out he was monitoring. He downloaded spyware onto my computer and hacked into my emails and social media accounts so that I could not reach out for help. When my friends and family tried to intervene, I swiftly told them to leave and that I was fine because I was afraid of what he would do. He broke me down through means of starvation, sleep deprivation, and threats against my life, sometimes with deadly weapons, which would result in me having severe panic attacks where I was unable to breathe or stop shaking. By the time I realized I was in a bad situation, I felt completely trapped and terrified for my life. Wood would also say that if she tried to sleep, her partner would throw things at her or would instruct her to do drugs that would make her disoriented or keep her awake, sometimes for days at a time. Rachel would state, once I was weakened by no sleep and little food, he would sometimes force me to partake in acts of fear, pain, torture, and humiliation, which he would videotape and which I felt powerless to stop. In 2019, Wood created the Phoenix Act, which extends the statute of limitations of domestic violence from 3 years to 5 years. This would be signed into law by California Governor Gavin Newsom in 2019 and took effect in January of 2020. Other individual statements have come forward as well, so let's dive into some of those. Ashley Walter says that she worked for Manson full-time as a personal assistant. She claims that he frequently became violent and would throw glass plates and heavy objects. She alleges that Manson offered her up for sexual encounters with collaborations and continued to harass her after their professional relationship had ended. She says that she now struggles with PTSD as well as depression. Unfortunately, her Instagram is not available. Gabriella, also known as the artist Sour Girl, alleges that Manson repeatedly tied her up and she claims that he forced her to take drugs with him and demanded she make a blood pact with him by cutting both their hands with broken glass. She says she spent one Christmas in the hospital after trying to take her own life, and since breaking up with him has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and still suffers from night terrors. Her Instagram posts reads as follows. I met Brian Warner, known as Marilyn Manson, backstage in October 2015. I was 22 and he was 46. The first thing that he had ever said to me was that he was going to bite me. We talked while the opening band played, and after the show he invited me on his tour bus. He immediately love-bombed me, telling me that he felt like he'd known me for years, and I felt similarly. He offered me cocaine. He told me to take off all my clothes and take a shower in front of him. He asked for my number as I was getting ready to leave and invited me to his show the following evening. The second time we met, he broke a wine glass in the hotel room and demanded we make a blood pact together. He cut both of our hands with broken glass. The reason I'm finally sharing this traumatic experiences for my healing and because I'm done being silent. I don't believe it's fair for someone not to be held accountable for their horrific actions. I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. A week after they had met, Manson sent a text message to Sour Girl stating, I adore you and I will miss you every moment we are apart. Don't forget the boat of a fragile mind, and don't forget our plans. To Mickey and Mallory Mouse. Sarah McNeely claims that she was thrown against the wall and Manson threatened to bash my face with a baseball bat. She alleges that she was locked in rooms when she was bad and was verbally berated for hours and made to feel worthless. She says she now suffers from PTSD as well as other mental health issues. Digging into Sarah McNeely's post on Instagram a little bit more, she states, he, Brian Warner, lured me in with love bombing, posing as the perfect boyfriend, claiming that he was just misunderstood, charming, smart, funny, and charismatic. As he was wooing me, I would come to find out he was torturing others. Before long, I was the one being tortured. I was emotionally abused, terrorized, and scarred. I was locked in rooms when I was bad, sometimes forced to listen to him entertaining other women. Kept away from certain friends, or if I didn't, he would threaten to come after them. I was told stories of others who had tried to tell their story, and their pets ended up dead. I wasn't allowed to go near other artists working on the same set, as he told them they had AIDS and were disgusting, and if I did so, he would be very upset, and I wouldn't want that. Ashley Lindsay Morgan alleges that she was not allowed to eat or sleep or leave Manson's home. She claims that Manson cut and burned her and asked her to bring him Nazi memorabilia. She says that she has been left with post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and night terrors. Additionally, Dan Cleary, a former guitar technician who toured with Manson, said that Manson changed Wood into a different person. Elaborating on that, he would say, I started working for him as a personal assistant in 2014-2015. I saw firsthand, over and over, him being an abusive and violent boyfriend to his girlfriend, Lindsay. Over the almost 2-year stretch, I saw her in tears and him screaming and belittling her more often than I didn't. He would threaten to kill her, cut her up, bury her, and embarrass her to the world. Making her cry and fear him made him feel good. He would remind her that she'd be homeless without him and make fun of her learning disabled family member. Cleary also claimed that several people in Manson's inner circle knew of the alleged abuse, but would not say anything because of the code and a fear of losing work. The ball does not stop rolling there. As a matter of fact, much like a tumor, this continues to grow. What can I say? It's now nighttime, and there's been a wardrobe change. Let's press forward, shall we? Game of Thrones actress Esme Bianco stated that in the 90s as a teenager, she was a sizable fan of Marilyn Manson. In her mid-teens, Esme would recall posters hung across her wall and stickers and photos fashioned to her lunchbox. Like most teenagers, Esme dealt with feelings creeping in from the dark side of her mind. She even recalls dating a Manson look-alike in high school. At the age of 23, Bianco had the chance to meet Manson. She would go on to say how this led to the psychological torture and violence that offset her acting career and left her with emotional and physical scars as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. Her direct words that Manson went from being a massive role model for her that really helped her through dark times to a monster who almost destroyed me and almost destroyed many women as well. Esme Bianco had met Manson in 2005 while he was engaged to Dita Von Teese. Both of these women were burlesque performers, and Dita had told Bianco that Manson wanted to meet her. Without hesitation, Esme agreed. After all, she had been a longtime fan. Manson had wanted to cast her for his film Phantasmagoria, which was his long-term project based around Lewis Carroll. They would visit each other occasionally, including Bianco meeting Von Teese and Manson at their home in Los Angeles. When Manson and Von Teese divorced in 2007, Manson would continue to contact Bianco via flirtatious emails in which Bianco noted that Manson would say things like, "I can always be cheered up with previously forbidden nude photos." But Bianco remains firm that their relationship at this time had always remained platonic. However, this would take a turn. In 2009, Manson sent Bianco a plane ticket to her London home for her to travel to Los Angeles to star in his music video for I Want to Kill You Like They Do in the Movies. Manson would detail that this would be filmed via a flip phone camera for a home video retro feel, and that he would be kidnapping her from his home. He would go on to say, "I need a victim/lover. You're going to have to pretend to be manhandled by me. Sorry." Bianco thought that this would be strictly professional. Bianco agreed to the job, but it was anything but professional. At the age of 26, Bianco states that she'd spent 3 days in lingerie without food or sleep and was offered drugs in place of nutrition. Manson would become violent, throwing a phone at a smoke alarm. Eventually, his anger would turn towards her as he would tie her up with cables and a prayer kneel, serving lashings with a whip, and using an electric toy known as a violet wand on her wounds. Bianco, while upset, wrote this off as Manson being theatrical and that they were just making art. When the day had come for her to fly home, Bianco would cry. She would express feelings of sadness at this time, stating that her wounds were proof of their bond. But she also knew that what had occurred was not BDSM. There was no consent. There were no safe words. There was no feeling of security, which she knew from her professional life were critical to safe power dynamics. Days later, Manson would email her pictures of the welts on her back with a note reading, "Bringing sexy back." When Bianco had returned, friends were shocked to discover that she did not nor express any interest in talking about her trip that much at all. Bianco had told her friend Hannah Fox, a manager of a fetish nightclub, that the cuts and bruises were just part of the biz. But Hannah disagreed, saying that a BDSM film clip would not actually require real injury. Manson would continue to communicate with Bianco, and at this time her marriage had started to take a decline. Manson would tell her things like, "You looked really beautiful in the footage we shot on the Kneeler." Bianco would make excuses for the music video not being released. Eventually, they would have an affair. Manson would meet her in London on trips, and during intimate encounters, Manson would bite her without consent, leaving her with bruises and calling it kinky. Ashley Walters, his manager at this time, would state that she had managed travel for Bianco and other women who were also promised shots at photo shoots and music videos. Walters would go on to say that she was responsible for giving him a schedule of who is at what hotel. As mentioned earlier, Walters was also an alleged victim of Manson. Manson would request Bianco to move in with him in 2011 with a promise of aid in her acting career. She recalls losing eyelashes from stress and frequent panic attacks. Bianco would leave her husband to live in West Hollywood. For a time, Manson would shower her with attention and care before it turned into dictation and control, ranging from what she could wear, how she could sleep, even down to requesting permission to come and go from home as she pleased. She was never provided a key to the apartment and recalls times where she would be violently shaken awake because she did not have permission to sleep. Ashley Walters even recalls a text message from Manson stating that someone had broken a glass in the studio, in which he would say, "Esme will get the brunt of this. Don't care." Walters also mentioned that Manson had a small closet-sized room with glass walls dubbed the Bad Girls Room. When the pilot for Game of Thrones aired, Manson would show her sex scenes to guests and say, "That's my girlfriend. She's a her are out." Eventually, Esme would find the nerve to leave Manson. Afterwards, she starred in 2 more seasons of Game of Thrones, filming some of the more graphic scenes. In one scene, she is made to whip a prostitute with a belt and a wooden scepter. In another scene, she would be found dead, hanging from a bedpost, bloody, filled with crossbow bolts. During this time, Esme recounts feeling nothing. After her role was finished with Game of Thrones, she struggled to find new roles, recounting that she was suffering from night terrors and panic attacks that made it impossible to sleep, let alone act or find any kind of job. Esme Bianco would inevitably join Rachel Evan Wood to aid in the Phoenix Act. Adding more impact to these allegations, and legally I have to say that, I think you guys are all aware of that now. Artist Love Bailey would come forward to say that in 2011, she had arrived at Manson's home to style an actress for a photo shoot. When the time came to style and dress the actress, she noticed that she was stumbling and disoriented. She would go on to state that she had to crawl over stained sheets to get to the actress, and as she did so, Manson put a gun to her forehead. Here, she explains it better herself.
Howdy y'all, my name is Love Bailey, and I just want to thank you for everyone that's reached out to me and offered their condolences during this dark time. Because of you, I am brave to stand in my truth and to tell my story. And because of all the death threats I've been getting, the photographers reaching out threatening me, I feel it's a pressing matter that I speak directly to the camera and tell my testimony of what really happened the night I met Marilyn Manson. So that day I was doing a photo shoot with the actress for Love Cat magazine, and Love Cat is now Galore magazine. So we did this photo shoot at Jeffrey Deitch's house, and I was asked to follow to Marilyn Manson's recording studio on Santa Monica Boulevard, where I was supposed to dress for this photo shoot. So I show up to Marilyn's house, and I remember 3 rooms. There was his recording studio that had plastered on all the walls, hustler spreads, women scantily clad, plastered on all his walls. There was the living room where we were stationed to put hair and makeup in the glam team. And then there was his bedroom that he had in his recording studio. So as we were unpacking all the couture and the glam for the photo shoot, I noticed there was all these dark paintings on the ground. All these demonic paintings that were done out of charcoal, like scribbled aggressively. And they were all sort of scattered and accumulating into the corner of the room where it looked like he was trying to open a portal. There was like this big circle of charcoal that looked like he was trying to open a portal of some demonic presence.
That I used to love Marilyn Manson, and I was like, oh, I was there with Love that night. And that's when I was assisting for her. We went into the living room with all that creepy freaking art and with like the cocaine bags everywhere. And then you were gonna have us come and help you. And he was like, no assistance allowed. like, don't know why you brought them, like, they're useless, like, they can stay outside.
As we were getting ready, I'm like trying to put the couture together and just do my job. I was 20 years old. I was a young, naive stylist, just trying to make a name for myself. And here I am in the presence of what I thought were my heroes, Marilyn Manson. I looked up to his music until that instance. So I'm just doing my job. I get called in to go into Marilyn's boudoir. And as I'm walking into his boudoir, to the left side, there was a glass cage where it looked like that he held his victims, where he held women against their will. There was a lock on it. I crawl over the sex-stained sheets that and Marilyn had just finished up whatever they were doing, and I looked over to and she was blackout wasted. And I don't know if this was from pills. She was not coherent at all. She was stumbling over. She hurt her knee on the bedside table, and Marilyn laughed at her and just ran over to help. And as I'm, holding and trying to get her balance with her, Marilyn pulls a gun to my head, a big Glock, a metal Glock, not a toy gun. This was a real gun. And he pulls a Glock straight to my forehead and says, "I don't like as he laughs in this really dark, aggressive tone. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a humorous behavior or something to take lightly. And I remember being stunned in that moment. I felt powerless.
That you called me and you were so shocked. Like you're kind of just like your life flashed before your eyes. And I remember you were kind of traumatized about the whole thing, and you couldn't believe that you had a gun pulled to your head, and I couldn't believe it either. I was kind of like, what? Yeah, I remember that. You were in shock.
And I finally am brave enough to come out about this after all these years because of Evan's testimony. But for so many years, I've been silenced into not saying anything, because of the industry, because of the fashion industry, because of these people, these photographers that will blacklist you for mentioning their name. And for so long, I've been silent, but now I think it's time. I come clean about my story and my experience. And you know what? If my voice can help save a life, in doing so, if my voice can help other victims come forward and stand in their truth, so be it. So be it. I don't give a fuck about the fashion industry. I don't give a fuck about styling and, upholding these false beliefs and these false powers at B. I don't care anymore. Okay? I don't want to work with these people anyways. I know that in my power, in my truth, I have enough to offer the world, and I'm a magical blessing to the world, and my existence, my very presence is a blessing to this earth. So these men hold no power over me anymore. And I'm sorry that it took so long to come out about this story, but I'm happy to share my truth. And thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony, and Godspeed those victims. I stand with you. My heart goes out to you. I love you all. Thank you.
As much as I would love to say that this is where the story ends and gather your thoughts, we're still not finished. Ellie Roswell went to Twitter with a thread that reads as follows. Solidarity to Evan Rachel Wood and those calling out Marilyn Manson. It's sad to see people defending him just because he put his depravity in plain sight does not give him a free pass to abuse women. I met Marilyn Manson backstage at a festival a few years ago. After his compliments towards my band became more and more hyperbolic, I became suspicious of his behavior. I was shocked to look down and see that he was filming up my skirt with a GoPro. There were no repercussions for his behavior. His tour manager simply said he does this kind of thing all the time. If he does this kind of thing all the time, why on earth has he been headlining festivals for so many years? When will we stop enabling misogynists on the account of their success? Women must feel safe in the male-dominated world that is the music industry. I wasn't sure whether to bring this up, but Manson claims in his recent statement that his relationships were entirely consensual. I don't think he knows the meaning of consent if he goes around upskirting young women at festivals. Thank you for your courage, Evan. Additionally, Phoebe Bridges would also make some Twitter statements. I went to Marilyn Manson's house when I was a teenager with some friends. I was a big fan. He referred to a room in his house as the room. I thought it was just his horrible frat boy sense of humor. I stopped being a fan. I stand with everyone who came forward. The label knew. Management knew. The band knew. Distancing themselves now, pretending to be shocked and horrified, is fucking pathetic. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more gasoline to this fire, shall we? Going back to Rachel Evan Wood for just a moment. On the Saturday of the same week that Wood had outed Manson as her abuser, she filed a police report against Lindsay Usick. Rachel would share screenshots of a conversation on Discord where two users discussed a person named Lindsay who would be asking for photos of Wood. One of the users mentions that the photo would ruin Rachel's career and that Lindsay was specifically seeking a photo of Wood wearing Manson's stage hat and a Hitler-style mustache scrawled on her face. Digging further into this, Wood would claim that Manson would use anti-Semitic insults at her, that Manson dons 3 Nazi tattoos, and that he would draw swastikas on her bedside table. Otep Shemaiah of the band Otep would also make public statements about Manson that specifically relate to his current spouse Lindsay Usick. Otep claims that Lindsay would call her home regularly to vent about abuse she had suffered at the hands of Manson. Otep further stated that she recalls dating a woman that had been good friends with Usick and was aware of conversations the unnamed woman would have with Usick describing heavy drug use and threats of violence at the hands of Manson. In her own words, Otep would state, "Warning, unpopular opinion coming. Hey everyone, okay. I've been getting a lot of requests regarding my thoughts on Manson. I don't normally discuss personal stuff, but since all this evidence is coming out that he's sexually and physically assaulted a number of women and minors, not to mention being a sexist and a Nazi sympathizer, I've decided to tell you what I know. I was a huge fan of his. I even wore his shirt at Ozfest when people were blaming him for Columbine. I have met him many times. We have mutual friends including Gene Simmons' son, Nick Simmons. Manson even told one of my fans he was afraid of me after Sivis Tra was released, which I took as a huge compliment. But then I dated a woman who was friends with his current wife Lindsay and her twin sister who's married to James Iha of A Perfect Circle. And Lindsay used to call our house in the early hours, and I was told she was hysterical because he was on another drug binge, threatening her life, throwing knives at her that stuck in the wall, and verbally assaulting her. We offered many times to have her come to my house because he would never come face me with that bullshit. Believe it. But sadly, she wouldn't leave him. So my ex would calm and talk her down until Manson realized she was on the phone and he'd woed down. But then he started calling in the early hours. I was told he was paranoid, gacked out of his mind, and accusing his wife of cheating with an imaginary person who had blonde hair and a blonde mustache named Don, who he, I'm told, saw on his security cameras and was fucking his wife. Look, this is heartbreaking for all the women he's hurt, but also for all the fans who always had his back, like me. But he is not the Luciferian evil everyone thinks he is. He's just a violent junkie who chooses to bully and, according to reports, physically and sexually attacks women who he thinks are weaker than he is. I say, may he rot, Otep. Manson, of course, would go on to deny all of these allegations against him, stating that, obviously, my art and my life have long been magnets for controversy, but these recent claims about me are horrible distortions of reality. My intimate relationships have always been entirely consensual with like-minded partners. Regardless of how and why others are now choosing to misrepresent the past, that is the truth. To add just one last thing to this video, since all allegations have come out, I just want to make it clear that since all of this has happened, California State Senator Susan Rubio has requested an FBI investigation into Marilyn Manson, so maybe justice can be served. There are a lot more layers to this onion, and I haven't even gotten to some of the other women that have come forward, but I feel that this is a great place to stop and take a break. Some of the information in this video can be a bit overwhelming for some, and I want to remain a little bit aware that at this point there are likely a lot of people who may not have been able to stomach some of these allegations and statements. So for now, I want to end this video. Let me know what your thoughts are on this situation. Would you like to see a second video? Maybe I can dig up some more statements from other individuals that were mentioned earlier in the video, as well as adding other statements and allegations that haven't even been mentioned. Let me know down in the comment section below, not only about part 2, but let me know what you think about the statements that were made here. As much as people want to say, well, it doesn't come as a surprise, listen to his music, look at how he dresses, look at all of his personal interests, that's not always true. There are a lot of people out there that are a part of the subculture that are good people and are not animals or monsters and treat others with respect. It's not always so obvious, and it's never guaranteed to be apparent on a surface level. Make sure that you leave a like on this video, as hard as it may be given the current information within it. It really helps the channel, so please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I make content like this all the time, albeit sometimes it takes a while. And as always, I'll catch you in the next video.